Hello tankers and tankettes, and welcome to Supporter Spotlight number 27. We're going to kick things off with a short bit of action from Redman 36 here, and this was just an amusing thing that happened in one of the games he's played. This is the 122-54, the other Tier 9 Soviet tank destroyer, the one that isn't the big monster gun Object 704. And it's pretty mobile. It's the T-54 chassis with basically the same gun that both of the Tier 9 Soviet heavy tanks use. So it's got a good rate of fire, but it's not particularly high alpha, at least not for a tank destroyer. However, it's going to be more than good enough for the task at hand, because Redman has spotted that the enemy light tank platoon is trying to rush round for artillery. Now ordinarily this would be a bit risky, 3 light tanks versus a tank destroyer, because of course no turrets. They could quite easily try and track him, get behind him, whatever, but he is forewarned and he's setting himself up in a location where they're going to have to cover some ground to get to it. Now his first shot goes completely wild, but it's at this point they clearly, I mean, they're not trying to approach undercover, they're not really coordinating, they're all just pretty much coming in willy-nilly. So he's already put one shot to the 12T. So there we go, finishes off the 12T, and he's actually bounced some shots from the chaffing. Now these guys were actually complaining earlier in the chat about, and there's number 2, complaining about the matchmaking, and I think particularly the chaffies not realising that being a Tier 5 scout sitting with a Tier 6 scout, yeah, you're going to get bad matchmaking. So anyway, there we go. All 3 of them down, finishes off the last one with a completely unnecessary ammo rack. And, well, that was a Nadine's medal in about, what, 30 seconds or less? And in fact, pretty much the entire enemy team was almost dead by that point anyway, so that was a very short game indeed. So on to some Conqueror action from Game Glitch here, and we're going to get to see the nice gun of the Conqueror in action. It's got a very, very nice bit of firepower. It's 120mm gun with good rate of fire, excellent accuracy, excellent handling, and the HD Conqueror compared to previously, it's actually a little tougher than it was. I think the turret got some armour. Anyway, that Panther 2's just now noticing that, oh yeah, it's a Tier 9 heavy tank shooting at me after half of his health is gone already. Yeah, he's not really paying that much attention, was he? Now this is going to be a bit of a messy match. The result is going to be good, but it's not perfect by any means. However, he's already racked up a decent amount of damage, and this is the one area where he's not going to be doing badly at all. In fact, I think he gets through most of his shells in this one. And it's almost a risk with something like the Conqueror, because you can just fire so rapidly and you don't carry a huge number of shells. Well, you can burn through them rather quickly if you're not careful. So trying for a shot at the SP1C there, getting a bit distracted in fact. He decides to then push up, but again trying to see if he can get some shots, but it's unlikely. I mean, we can look at the minimap and see that guy is right on the river front, so there's lots of buildings in between him and Game Glitch. Now this comet is going to be funny, because this comet just sits there, and yes, he's hull down, but he's trusting his turret armour in a comet versus the Conqueror's gun. There's also a bunch of other things back there as well. I mean, you can see the 87 is, I don't know if that's the 20-pounder or if that's a 17-pounder, but either way, he's just, I don't know, he was keeping, or doing his best to keep Game Glitch permatracked, but Game Glitch obviously decided, okay, we're going to repair and do something about that. The Comet, meanwhile, has taken another hit, but he's in exactly the same location. It's just sitting there taking it, and it's literally only RNG that saved him from the previous shot. And again, another. I think that one actually bounced. I'm not sure if that was the ass of the friendly KV or if that actually bounced off the Comet, but either way, it is just sheer luck, because the Comet is still sitting there. And yes, he's hull down, but and there we go, his luck finally runs out. That was not a smart move from the Comet at all. So we're over 2,500 damage, and this SP1C is being a bit cheeky. If he got some shots into the side and rear armour, he would have absolutely no difficulty punching through a comet. Meanwhile, well, it's a KV5, not a KV4. Game Glitch's allies, he doesn't have a lot of them left now. He's basically got the KV5 here, and there's a bunch further back, but this is all turning out a bit messy. And bear in mind, this is an assault game. I don't know if you've noticed that on the minimap. I mean, it's a little bit obvious if you think about it, because there's only one cap circle, but there's only 10 minutes, and Game Glitch's team, they're the assaulting team, they have to either cap or kill the entire enemy team inside of 10 minutes. They can't afford to sit around. They really do have to get moving. Now at this point we're about to get sublime and ridiculous, because that's an IS-3. Now he's full health and the first shot goes in, that's fine, but well, unless the IS-3 stays back and lets Game Glitch basically stay hull down, the IS-3 can easily just shoot him in the lower front plate. And the KV-5 is partially being kept back by those other tanks that are back there, so he's not of any immediate help. And although this is looking, you know, okay, one more hit, then that happens. Yes, the magical IS-3 side armor saves the day, and Game Glitch takes a hit himself. So, okay, no, it's fine though, we just need one more hit, it's fine. And no, okay, that wasn't very well aimed. I think that was Game Glitch that time rather than just random RNG dictating that, yes, it's the side of an IS-3, but of course it bounced. And another bounce. Well, that one was maybe a little poorly aimed. It was on the offside of the beak, but it's only 110mm of armour. And another bounce. I think Game Glitch was maybe getting a bit flustered at this point. Anyway, the KV-5's managed to come forward and was shooting him, but not before Game Glitch took a hit himself. So, we can breathe a little. There are two tier 7s up ahead, and you can see the 87s actually resorted to firing APCR, but on the other side, well, the push-up did not go so well, and the enemies have actually counter-pushed, and they're now down at the spawn area. They're being held off by a 704 and a Panther with a couple of tanks further back. So that's the 87 out of the way. There was a Tiger up here, but he's now out of the way as well. And we're going to jump slightly ahead because Game Glitch is now approaching the cap circle. And there's only 3 minutes left. Now he's been spotted, fire's on the move, and that's fine. Although he's now down to just APCR. But then he makes a big mistake. The T-28 can see him, and it's really quite lucky that Game Glitch didn't get actually tracked there. So that's the one remaining hit he could afford to take, really, and it was a bit of a silly one to take. He absolutely did not need to poke out and take that hit, and instead he did, so whoops. And then he does a really odd thing. He switches to HE ammo, and I'm not quite sure why. It might be he wanted to preserve his APCR for his remaining tanks, the Skoda and the Jagdpanther. But I don't know. I'm not entirely clear why he's on the HE shells, and he's still got an HE shell loaded. So that appears to be the Jagdpanther firing HE at him. Don't know why. Again, a mystery of HE, and maybe it's because he's out of AP ammo. But no, he's definitely not out of AP ammo, and it's a good thing that appears to have been the 88mm gun, because, well, that, if it had been the 105mm gun, could quite probably have killed him. It might have been the 105 with a really low roll, but for a 230 average, for a 230 damage shot, it probably was the long 88. So he's now super low health. He did get hit into the Skoda, but it was with HE. And I don't actually know if it's HE on this gun. It's been long enough since I've played the Conqueror that it might actually be HESH shells that he was firing and hoping to get in. But anyway, back onto the APCR. The Bulldog goes forwards, takes the hit, and that lets Game Glitch get the kill on the Skoda. So that's fine. They do have the numbers, but they're rapidly running out of time, and it's just this one lone Jagdpanther who's apparently been at the back most of the game. Anyway, he gets lit up by the KV-13, and there we go, one last hit in, and that's the victory. So it was a bit messy, and that fight against the KV-3 got a bit silly, but overall the result was pretty good. It was an ace tanker, he got a Spartan, steel wall, and a high caliber, and as we'll see in just a second, just over 6,000 damage done for a base XP of 1,500, which is not bad when you're top tier. It's not bad at all. And you can actually look at the rest of the team and see that he was doing by far the lion's share. Although the KV-5's 2,000 plus damage is relatively respectable, but over 6k damage, well, it was very good matchmaking for it, but even so, that was a relatively close game. So next we're going to go on to some World of Warships, and I've actually got more or less full Fuso game from Manti 111 here, and then we're going to see a little clip. We're going to have some Yamato action courtesy of Yachty 70, and it really was just, again, like we opened up with the 122.54, it was just a Yamato doing Yamato things, and I thought it's not quite worth showing the full thing, but the end was rather amusing. So anyway, the Fuso, tier 6, very well regarded. It's got 6 twin turrets with 14-inch guns, and it's got a pretty respectable turn of speed. It's something like 27 knots. So with the range of the guns, with the speed, it's overall quite a nice ship to play. It's just got quite a lot of firepower, and I think it's like 21 point something kilometers range. It's actually got a better range than the Nagato at tier 7, so you in some ways get a slight downgrade with the Nagato, but the Nagato is still a very nice ship. There's invariably arguments about like, is the Fuso better or is the New Mexico better, and I think it's one of these things where it just comes down to personal preference. Some people are going to prefer the maneuverability and the increased speed of this, and other people are going to prefer the extreme toughness of the New Mexico. But I think in tier 8 games the Fuso is generally a bit better equipped to handle itself just because of the extra range, even though the armour isn't great. A lot of the 8-inch gunned cruisers, if you're showing broadside, they can punch through your side armour without too much difficulty, whereas with the New Mexico it's harder, but of course the New Mexico has to get a lot closer, and in those high tier games that can be a problem sometimes. So he's landed a few shots so far, but nothing spectacular. It's a bit unfortunate that he didn't do better out of that New Mexico that ran aground, but sometimes with Battleship RNG you never quite know what's going to happen. And I have to say, his shooting is maybe not the best I've ever seen, but that's going to be true of Yachty as well. Now I don't know if, when he's firing there, I don't know if that's a replay glitch or if he really was firing that low. It's a little hard to tell. Sometimes you can't, with the replays, you can't tell exactly which target somebody's firing at, because the replay, especially with torpedoes, but with guns sometimes as well, the replay will focus a different ship than the player was actually focusing at the time. And I know there's a couple of, like Arun and I think one or two of the other YouTubers, that they basically don't use the replays, they only use stuff they've recorded live. And I have tried that myself, but it's a matter of A, remembering to set everything up to record, and B, having sufficient disk space to sit down and do that. Anyway, that Nuremberg is getting awfully close. That's a nice tempting target, and he's broadside, so if we can ninja this kill, that would be rather nice. But no, it just turns out, however, very luckily that shell just catches him even so. So that's a first kill. Very nice. Now that Warspite's getting pretty close, and the Warspite guns are nasty. They are considerably bigger than anything else that the other tier 6 battleships have available. Although we don't yet know what the German tier 6 is going to be like, but it's unlikely to be a big gunned battleship. We actually, I mean, if the pattern of the Bismarck holds true, they might be smaller caliber, but you know, better in other ways. So they're probably going to be 14-inch guns. In fact, it's probably available somewhere. The initial stats are probably available because, of course, we now know what the lineup of German battleships is going to be. And I think there are some stats available on places like the Armoured Patrol. And I think the EU forums had some preliminary stuff available as well. And stuff like gun caliber, of course, is not going to change. I probably could have looked it up before doing the video, but this is how my brain just wanders onto whatever I'm going to talk about in the course of a video. So anyway, we shall see what the Germans are like, but it's unlikely they will have bigger guns. So the Warspite's out the way. There's a force pursuing a New Mexico down south, and that New Mexico is actually going to survive quite a long time. And in the meanwhile, well, they've lost control of the middle cap point, and they are actually now behind on points. So Manti starts to push across, and well, he's hoping to punish this Murmansk, which of course doesn't have a lot of armour. But there's also a New York who's pretty close range as well. So although in theory a Fuso versus a New York, it's probably in favour of the Fuso, especially if the New York's going to run himself aground. What is it with enemy warships running themselves aground in this one? But, well, the fight isn't going to be anything like that clean, unfortunately. Now, the Kirov is trying to make a torpedo drop, and I think he actually does get some torpedoes in, but he's taking a bit of damage himself, and the Kirov is, of course, quite squashy. And this New York is suddenly, he's suddenly registered that, oh, that's a Fuso, and he switches fire to Manti. Now look at the health that Manti is going into this with. Now he's not also shooting very well here. I think he's way overestimating how quickly the New York can actually reverse. And although this is a nice broadside target and he is doing some damage, it's not been a lot so far. He could angle out a little further and get his rear guns, but instead he's just getting the front guns on so far. But there we go, he is now angling out a bit. And, well, if he'd aimed maybe a little better, he might have got some citadel areas, but it's... anyway, it's damage done, but maybe not enough damage, because suddenly that's a whole lot of other enemy ships. The Kirov is down, and he's basically alone facing most of the rest of the enemy team, because most of the rest of his team is chasing down a single New Mexico, who's still alive. So, he's starting to take some damage himself, and if he can get the New York out of the picture, that's good, but he's actually turned the other way, so his rear turrets are now not going to be pointing where he wants them to. And it's at this point he makes a decision that's going to be costly. Now he could pass in front of the island and just keep plugging away the New York, but that would mean he could keep his armour at an angle at the... well, a reasonable angle. But instead he decides he's going to pass behind the island, which means showing his broadside, and he gets spanked hard. That's got to be at least one citadel, if not two. So, remember how he started this engagement going into this cap circle with basically full health? Yeah, and he's already used one of his health repairs. So, it's not looking so good now, is it? This is very, very messy. Now, he's only got one ship firing at him right now, fortunately, the New York, but that New York's managed to do quite a lot of damage. The Manti hasn't managed to really repay him in the same way, but quite fortunately, there we go, gets a citadel finally. And even though that New York was broadside a lot of that for a lot of that engagement, it took Manti maybe a bit too long to finally finish him off, and it was a very, very costly engagement. So anyway, the gist is that it may have been costly, but he's still alive, and he's now got just one cruiser to deal with, because the remaining enemies, instead of all piling in to try and take him out, they've all turned around to face those group of friendlies that were going round from the south. So it's literally just the Karlsruhe who try to drop torpedoes, and they are 6 kilometer torpedoes, so he's just in range, but well, it's not going to work out for him at all. In fact, they completely missed, and Manti himself has managed to take over half this guy's health. Now the Karlsruhe, I feel some sympathy for this guy, because the Karlsruhe does not cope with being up-tiered at all. It's not got a good reputation. And it's one of these ships where if you're top tier, the guns are actually not bad, but it just has such a horrendously short range on those guns that the moment you see tier 5s and tier 6s, life becomes a lot harder. There's not that much you can do. So Manty finishes him off and doesn't really take too much extra damage into the in the process, which is fine. Of the remaining enemy ships, it's Minikaze somewhere ahead of him. There's also Murmansk and the New Mexico. And, well, there's enough points left on the ticker. I mean, it's still really close. That, in theory, if he loses some of his teammates, this could possibly go in favour of the enemy. But he does still have some health left himself, and he's also now got a bit more range on these guys. He's not getting into close-on broadside engagements with American battleships, which is not really what you want to do in a Fuso if you can help it. So shots out on the New Mexico. He's actually captured the B point in the meantime as well, but oh, okay, that's not good. They've just lost one ship. So they've taken out that's the word. They've taken out the enemy destroyer, but they lost, I think, an Omaha in the process. And it looks like those torpedoes going in towards that Haruna as well. So the Haruna is now getting focused really hard. And the only other allied ship, Königsberg, is he's really backed off and he's keeping his distance, which is probably sensible under the circumstances. Now, the RNG gods at this point favour Manty with a massive, massive strike. 9 out of 12 hits on that salvo for 18,000 damage. And even though it's the broadside of a New Mexico, the New Mexico side armour is, or the belt armour is tough enough that a lot of the times with these kind of salvos, you just wouldn't do anything like that kind of damage. You'd have to be pretty close. But anyway, there we go. Finishes the guy off. That's his 4th kill. That really, really pushed him over the top in terms of damage. I mean, he was already approaching 100,000 damage, but I don't know. That's the unpredictability of battleships right there. You can have engagements like he was with the New York, where, to be fair, he wasn't shooting that effectively, but where it took quite a long time to take him down. And then you can have engagements like that, where a single salvo wipes out most of somebody's health. So with battleships, I mean, obviously a lot comes down to how well you're aiming, but the RNG factor is still relatively high as well. So one more shot and he might even finish off the Murmansk, and there we go, gets the Kraken unleashed. And although, again, a messy battle in some ways, it had a very nice result. He had a high caliber, or was that a Confederate, I'm not sure, and a Kraken unleashed, 5 kills, which is, it's not bad at all. And in terms of total damage done, I'm sure he was easily top of the team. So 2,076 base XP for those 5 kills. I mean, capping obviously helps, but a lot of it will have been from damage done. So that wasn't bad for being top tier. Over 120,000 damage done there, as we can see. So if you play your Fuso a lot and grind up through the Nagato and the Abagi, which are not really particularly tough grinds at all, and then the Izumo, which kind of is, eventually you can get yourself a Yamato. And as with Manty's game, Yotti wasn't really firing that effectively for at least the first part. I've cut out a good 5 or 6 minutes from the start of this. He basically spawned over somewhere on the 7-8 line and just spent the first part of the battle pushing across over towards A. And as you can see, well, each team has lost a couple of ships. His own team has got a cap circle, but the enemy team has got the mid-cap circle, and they're in the process of capping C. But this is one of those games where it seems to just, like, everything changes really quickly. It looks like it's relatively stable, and then all of a sudden the enemy team just collapses. And I hope I'm kind of giving away how it ends, but not really. I mean, the whole point of this is not so much how this game goes, it's what's going to happen with Yotti and his Yamato. Now, he's done a little bit of damage so far, but not a lot. Just over 10,000, maybe a little more. I think there were 1 or 2 blind hits there. But it's not like this is... I mean, for the amount of time spent, 7 minutes, and he's fired a couple of salvos as he was passing across to this area. It's really not a lot of damage done. Now, a lot of them were much longer range salvos. So you have to... I mean, it's a bit tricky using the Yamato guns, because the temptation is, okay, I've got this super long range, I'm just going to sit here and fire at super long range. But you're not going to hit that much. But when you get much closer, of course, even with... well, actually, I don't know exactly how accurate these guns are overall, because there are all sorts of hidden values involved. But life just gets a lot easier, especially when you're trying to aim for the Citadel areas. And, of course, these being the biggest guns in the game. The Citadels from the Yamato, they hurt. So at this point, he decides, and we can see actually the enemy team, they're half dead already. I mean, this is what I was talking about. Like in the space of, what have we had already? Like 2-3 minutes. This is really swung against the enemy team. So I think he just decided, even though this is not sensible, this is not a recommended course of action, he just decides to plow into the remains of the enemy team. This is basically, bar one Hindenburg, the entirety of the rest of the enemy team. So he correctly guessed that the Zhao was going to unleash a barrage of torpedoes, and you could see his secondaries already, even at this range, just pelting those enemy cruisers with HE shells. Yeah, he just... this is the kind of stuff, the kind of thing that you know it's not the sensible thing to do. You know it's absolutely not the sensible thing to do, but you do it anyway because the results might be hilarious. Now he's going to take, and there we go, more torpedoes. He's going to take at least one of those. And, oh, he's had a forward turret incapacitation. But, well, this Iowa is now pulling broadside at less than like 8 kilometers at this point. So this is a reasonably easy target to hit. And as long as he doesn't just completely burn out, as long as he doesn't get citadeled or detonated or whatever, he actually might be able to do quite a nice amount of damage. So he's already up to 38,000. Here goes another shot, and that's a citadel for 14,000, nearly 15,000 damage. And there's the other forward turret. Can he do a bit more? And there's 2 citadels for nearly 30,000 plus an incapacitation. And look at the amount of incoming fire. If this wasn't the... I mean, he clearly read that this was the dying stages of this battle, that the enemy team were absolutely just like collapsing, and he was just going to have to plow in if he wanted to do damage. So he did, and he's paying a really hefty toll. He's down to maybe a quarter health at this point, and the Zhao might well be ready to put out torpedoes again soon, but he's... Look at this, fairly broadside. The Zhao's turning in a little bit, but... Boom. Not going to matter. It was looking a bit dicey as to whether he'd survive that, but killing that Zhao gave him enough points to put them over the top, and there we go. He went from 10,000 damage-ish to 136,000 in the space of about 4 or 5 minutes there. So that's not bad. Completely silly, completely not a sensible way to play your Yamato, but you just saw that the circumstances were ripe for ploughing in and having some fun, and he did. So that wraps up our look at what our supporters have been up to, what my supporters have been up to in the last couple of weeks. I think we're actually maybe a week over with Tank Fest and everything that happened, but anyway, here we are now. Hopefully you have enjoyed it, and if you have, you can stick any comments below, you can hit the like button, you can sub to my channel if you haven't already, and as always, stay tuned for more.